welcome to another episode of All Elite Arcade. I am your co-host, Evil Uno, always here with my co-host and friend, the Chugs. How you doing, Chugs?
Yes, as always. I'm good. It's an exciting week. Today is episode 25, Uno.
Yeah,
25.
We're
yeah.
midpoint of the year.
Yeah.
We're 6 months in, and we're not slowing down in any way possible.
No.
In case you're wondering, I'm currently in Europe. This is going to be a quick episode.
Yes.
Both of us have played a little less stuff than the last few weeks. Last one was one of our meatiest ones for sure.
Because so meaty.
We came in loaded with video games to play. This week though, I have played some stuff. But I am going to give you the floor because I believe you are still playing Black Myth Wukong.
I sure am. So, Uno, this week was so interesting because, again, I didn't play as many different games, but I did put quite a bit of time, once again, into Black Myth Wukong, so I hope not everyone is tired of hearing about it already. However, I will say, Uno, I've had over 900 streams. I've been streaming for over 4 years. Absolutely love it. And I will say, I encountered the most difficult thing that I've ever played on stream with Black Myth Wukong.
Harder than anything in Elden Ring.
Really, like as far as the time
Okay.
it took me to do it. So like if that's what we're basing difficulty on, as far as like the length it took, Black Myth Wukong, this one secret boss I fought, definitely takes the cake. It took me 2 entire streams, I think 5+ hours, to beat this one boss that I was fighting over and over and over again. And I've had some challenging encounters in the Elden Ring DLC, in some of the Hollow Knight Pantheons, but this one optional boss that I fought in Chapter 4, so I don't want to spoil anything, but for those who have played Chapter 4, they know what I'm talking about. It was so incredibly difficult. It took me such a long time to kind of perfect and understand this guy's mechanics. He was faster than any enemy I had fought before. He hit harder than any other enemy I had fought before. His health pool was unbelievable. You almost had to play perfectly, at least for me. And there were a couple of times where I almost had him, like he was just a couple of hits away and then I would die. But when I finally did it, I think it was the biggest pop-off I've had on stream before. So I was so relieved to finally beat him. Again, incredible bosses, incredible game, but the challenge is getting out of control now. Absolutely out of control. So I still think I have a little ways to go, but this one optional boss, seriously, it tested me so much. It was so challenging.
And I think there's a whole other chapter still left. I think there's 5, if not 6 chapters in this video.
I've heard there's 6, and I'm still on chapter 4. Yeah, right?
Right. Now, so I'm curious. Obviously, I haven't seen you play this boss. If I had watched your Twitch stream, then I would have a ton of details for sure. 2 questions. One, was it parry heavy? Because I feel like the further I'm getting into this game, the more I'm realizing that some of these enemies, like, I'm not seeing the opportunities when to hit them, so they're probably parry bosses.
So it's interesting that you bring that up because I'm curious how that play would have gone. So Rock Solid is an option for you to use, which is pretty much the parry mechanic within Black Myth Wukong. But I have not used Rock Solid at all. I've stuck with literally Immobilize, Cloud Step, my transformation, obviously, and then also a pluck of many with the duplicates that you create.
That's my build as well.
Yeah. And I've also stayed in Smash stance the entire time. So sometimes I wonder too, going to pillar stance might be smarter. Going to thrust stance might be smarter. And I put so much of my skill points. Actually, currently, I'm going through the build of wanting to really increase my critical chance and my critical damage. Because my God, the crits in this game are so effective. But what I did notice that I'm running into is I had to play so much slower than I normally did. To me, in Black Myth Wukong, I've been rewarded so much for being really aggressive. Like, obviously, you got to take your time and plan your blocks or plan your dodges and things like that. But as far as being aggressive, I had to like pump the brakes a little bit with this particular boss, where I would literally sometimes wait for him to walk and I would get like 2 or 3 light attacks and then get out of there. So it was like an endurance fight as well, at least for the way that I played. I'm sure there's a different strat or a different way to go about it. But for me, finally being able to do it, it was oh my God, I'm still flying high from it, Uno. I'm still flying high from it. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more like when you finally succumb a challenge in a video game, it's one thing. But when you're talking about bosses that you invested hours upon hours upon hours, like anytime my soul 1-to-1 is Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. But every time I've spent numerous hours on one boss, when I finally beat it, I think I for a whole week, I feel like a god. Dude, I feel like it's the biggest achievement I've ever had.
It really, and I'm so glad you said that, because actually the chat, the Chugs Army, was saying to me, like multiple people were like, how are you not raging? And don't get me wrong, you're frustrated, and you really want to beat the boss, and you really want to do well. But one, Black Myth Wukong, it never feels like the game is screwing you over. If you get hit or you lose, it's your fault. But second of all, I love video games so much, and one of the things I love about games is when there is a really strong challenge and you finally overcome it. Like, what an accomplishment. That feeling of afterwards finally doing it is the best feeling in the world. So yeah, that I was able to keep my composure, but you're right. The feeling after being able to do something like that is always so rewarding, but it also terrifies me for the rest of the game. Again, I think I'm towards the end of Chapter 4, so I think here in the next couple weeks, I'll be able to say that I finished Black Myth Wukong, but I love it so much, I want to, search every single corner of this world. I love it. I love it.
So here's my final question about this. We had talked about the Chapter 2 secrets. Actually, Chapter 1 leads into Chapter 2 secrets, and how an optional boss from Chapter 1 getting his power ends up giving you the opportunity to get to Chapter 2's optional stuff. Is it as difficult to do these optional bosses on the fourth one?
I think it's getting more and more difficult across the board.
Okay.
It is continuing to get harder. However, I will say I did find a secret world and a secret area again, which is like a whole different level within Chapter 4. How I got it, I don't totally understand, but I encountered a boss that apparently is an optional boss if you missed something earlier, and then I went into this whole different world, and there were some very, very tough bosses. But I will say, that Chapter 4 optional boss that I fought was so difficult that me being stuck on a boss and dying like 5 times feels like nothing. You know? I felt
like
very
a breeze
lucky.
now.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's getting so good. Uno, I can't wait for you to finish it either, man. It's so good.
I'm still going through Chapter 2, so I'm still ways away from you, but I'm very excited because I know I'm going to try to finish it by end of the year, because once Game of the Year comes around, I definitely want to have that under my belt. As like one of the games I finished, because right now it definitely makes my list, and I haven't even finished the game. So
I think for both of us, man, it's going to be very high on our Game of the Year list. Yeah.
It's also like it plays right into both of our wheelhouses.
Yes.
Wheelwell? I don't know.
Wheelhouse
doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Okay,
matter.
I got it. Okay, cool. Pardon my French. On my end, so I replayed more UFO 50. We talked about it last week. How I played about 15 games of the 50 package. I played another 15, but I think I doubled the hours I put in from the previous week. So like if I played 10 hours the week before, I played 20 hours of UFO 50 this week.
Wow.
And there's 2 games that I just got so addicted. So of the 15, I played maybe an hour of each game, but there's 2 games I already invested 7 hours into each. And so one that I want to talk about for sure is, first of all, if you are just listening to this for the first time, UFO 50 is a compilation of 50 video games that are kind of supposed to look like NES games. It's supposed to look like 8-bit structure, but also structurally, the video games are supposed to make you think of what NES was like. Top downs, puzzle games, racing games, fighting games. They literally have a plethora of every type of game within that package of 50. And as of yet, I don't. The ones I would consider stinkers, I haven't given a ton of time to, and that's like maybe 2 of the 33 that I've played. Wow. So that's like a very high bar. I played one that, if it was a standalone indie game, would probably still make my list at the end of the year.
Really?
Yeah, I played one called Warp Tank, and all it is, you're a tank that you can warp up and down on levels, and you essentially have to solve puzzles to combat other tanks and other beings and start clearing map per map. And I don't know how to. It's not even it's not even a super original concept. It's very simple, but it had so much more depth than I thought. Like,
Yeah.
you're playing these NES games and you assume that, like, okay, I could probably beat most of these in an hour. I invested a good 7 hours into it, and what the crazy part of it is, I beat it. There's optional stuff. So, like, as you go into the description of every individual game, it shows you, like, oh, you achieved the gold rank, but there's also a cherry rank, which is like a special version of beating it, where you have to beat all of the things at like. So, for example, I beat all of the bosses. I think I had to beat all of the stuff without taking any damage. And then on top of that, there's a secondary unlock, because there's kind of like as you're beating these 50 games. So my understanding is there's 50 announced games, but I'm already finding out that there's secrets within this, and there might be a few more other games as well.
What?
But yeah, so it's jam packed with all kinds of weird, crazy secrets as of yet. And like, as I'm playing through these, I'm starting to see reoccurring characters, and I'm trying to decipher, like, okay, there's a second layer to this that I haven't fully understood.
Yeah.
And part of that second layer is that every game you have to unlock a gift. So within the game, you have to do specific things to unlock an item, and that item is then fed into like this overworld where you just have like a little pig guy walking in a house. But as you unlock the games, it unlocks items within that pig world, and he interacts with them. And so I feel like as that's going to progress, that's going to expand into its own game and might even unlock another game.
Wow.
Anyways, I will talk about UFO 50 next week again, because I've been so enthralled by half of the stuff I played, including Warp Tank. Warp Tank's the top one right now.
Yeah.
The other one's it's called like Malaya or something like that. Malaya 2. But I have 15 games left, and the way I play them, they're chronologically. I know that they become more advanced, further into the lineage of what an NES would be. So like later in the years. And so it's going to be more in depth, and it's going to have like more, probably better uses of sound chips and better uses of like the 8-bit package. And so I'm super excited, because I've already played a good amount of these video games, and a good of that. If they would be standalones, people would probably play them and be like, I can't believe you got to play this little gem,
I believe it.
And there's a ton of them in there. And so I've been really playing that the last week. And then on top of that, I have mentioned previously on this episode, I'm in Europe right now. I'm in France, first time here, doing an independent show. And part of my travel is I wanted to play UFO 50, but it's very cumbersome when you're sitting in coach, having a laptop in front of you. It's really hard. Right. So what I ended up doing is Balatro just came out on mobile. And so I went to purchase it, and I did. I spent the $9 on purchasing it. And then I found out that Apple Arcade just released Balatro on it for the monthly fee.
Yes.
As well as 4 of my other favorite games, mostly card games. So now I'm actively, in my 8-hour trip, I played a little bit of all of this. I played several hours of Balatro, still going to make my top 10 game of the year. And now is a big problem, because now that I have it on my phone, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. We'll see. It's going to get crazy. Monster Train, which is an incredible card-based battle game. It's done in rungs. So as you defeat enemies, it goes to the next rung, and you're trying to defend your unit at the top. Slay the Spire, which I talked about a few weeks ago, also available on there. And then on top of that, they also just unlocked Vampire Survivors on mobile on Apple Arcade. Ooh. So if you get Apple Arcade right now for $6 a month, you can get 5 of the games that have been the most addicted to in the last decade. And now it sucks, because I've already gone through this phase for these games where I dream about them and I think about them. And I've only played one day, maybe 2 hours of each. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go through the whole ringer and beat all of these again.
That is very exciting, Uno, because I do have Apple Arcade, and literally that was for Jetpack Joyride 2. So to know all these are available as well is pretty exciting. Pretty exciting.
And then they have other games too. They have like Stardew Valley, and you can play that with controller on your iPhone as well, so you can have the full experience. It's mobile gaming has really advanced in a way that it's almost it's an own device at this point. A lot of the independent games that I would play on PC are available now on mobile. And like, if you have played Balatro, you know exactly how painful it is to know that you can now play it on your phone. It is so addictive. I'm going to be playing that for sure on my trip back home when I come back to America. In just like, when this releases, I'll be back on my way to America for sure. So yeah, that's a lot of card games this week. We've been cycling through games that we've played before, but I'll tell you this: a lot of meat left on those bones.
So much meat left. There's so much meat on these games we're playing. So much.
That's right. Well, that's the games we're playing this week, but that's not all. We actually have a big week of news because the Sony State of Play and Tokyo Game Show happened this week. We'll talk all about that right after this. Welcome back to All Elite Arcade. It's time for your news of the week. It is late September. We just got a State of Play. I'm hearing we have a Nintendo Direct coming out in the next week as well. We have Tokyo Game Show that just got released.
Yeah.
All of this, and then also news. We talked about Will Ospreay coming here to talk about Assassin's Creed. Unfortunately, Assassin's Creed's been moved back a few months to February, but also they've announced that simultaneously, rather than have console and PC come out at separate times, it will come out all at the same time. So all consoles and Steam day one in February. So we will come back to that, and we will have Will Ospreay talk about his Assassin's Creed experience in the future. But just a little bit of tidbit news on Assassin's Creed Shadows. That's coming out in February. Take the time you need. You know what? I'd rather you come out with a good game.
Completely agree. Could not agree more.
Big announcements this week because Tokyo Game Show came out this week, as well as State of Play. Chronologically, theoretically, State of Play happened first. But we're going to talk about Tokyo Game Show real quickly because both me and Chugs forgot to watch the trailer.
Yeah.
So we're a little behind, but I will say this: the lineup announcement at Tokyo Game Show was much smaller than State of Play. It included Fragpunk, Regeneration, so these are new games. Slitterhead, that's the survival horror game that I had talked about last week.
Yes.
So there was some more in-depth look at possessing other beings and stuff. So that looks very interesting. And then we also got, and this is coming just around the corner, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater.
Yes.
Got a brand new trailer. I have not watched it yet, but I watched all the previous ones. That is one that I'm very excited about. And that is just around the corner. All new trailers, thanks to Tokyo Game Show. And that's actively still going on. Our friend Kenny Omega's out there visiting some friends and playing some video games. I know there's a hands-on with that new Pirates Yakuza game as well. So I'm sure we will be talking about it in the coming week because some people will probably get their first impressions of a lot of cool games very, very soon.
Oh, yeah.
But the big meaty piece that we have today is the Sony State of Play. Because Sony came in and they came firing with a lot of cool and new and interesting things and one giant title, which we'll save for the very end.
Yeah.
It all started with, we've all been playing Astrobot. Well, guess what? There's free Astrobot content coming out.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe they added this. A speed run and a special bots add-on. They added 10 extra bots within the world, including bots from Stellar Blade and Helldivers. Very interesting.
Right.
And this free add-on comes out in fall, which is just around the corner. The game literally just came out, and it's already coming out with free content.
Exactly. It's unbelievable. And the fact that they're adding speedrunning levels too has me really excited because even playing casually through the game, there were times where I thought like I would complete like an optional level and I went, I bet I could do this faster. So for speedrunners, this is going to be so exciting. But like you said, I can't believe we're already getting new content on a game that's going to be on a lot of people's Game of the Year list. That's
exactly.
awesome.
And that literally only came out a week and a half ago, and this probably comes out in a month. So
right.
they've been which means probably they're gonna come out with more content too, which is very exciting. So this features 5 new speedrunning levels and 10 new bots, 2 of which they've already revealed with Stellar Blade and Helldivers. And like I said, that comes out in the fall. But that's not the only DLC we saw. This one I'm super excited about. Alan Wake 2 just came out with the Night Springs DLC earlier in the year. They had already previously announced that Lake House was going to be the name of their next DLC. Well, we actually got to see the expansion in a trailer for Lake House. It is themed around Control. So this will be... So if you played Control, it had a DLC that connected it to Alan Wake 2.
Yep.
And now in Alan Wake 2, there's a DLC that is going to connect Control to Alan Wake 2, and essentially build the universe, because their next game is supposed to be Control 2, in which will somehow connect it even further. It's in a new location. It runs parallel to the main story, so it'll be the characters of Control simultaneously as Alan Wake 2 happens, and it is Agent Estevez is the main character in that one. And it is anticipated to come out this October, so just a month from now. Very excited for Alan Wake 2 DLC.
Me as well. And I do love that Remedy does this with their franchises. I love that like Control and Alan Wake has kind of been attached. So yeah, very excited. Again, Alan Wake 2, one of the best horror games in recent memory, obviously. So to get some really good DLC of this, and especially with the connection to, I don't know, I'm very excited for it. Very, very excited for it.
I don't think there's another developer that does it like they do, right? Like I can't think of another game developer that mingles all of their games. Like there's always like, I think Bethesda always gives you like little indications that Doom might be in the same universe, but to actually full blown like connect and interstitch like every little detail so that it's one universe, I don't think there's any other developer that
I don't either. And I love it. The attention to detail must be wild. So
so that was for DLC news, but they announced a ton of other stuff. I'm gonna start with lower on the rung. We got to see Hitman World of Assassination, a full-blown announcement and also gameplay trailer of Hitman in VR on PSVR 2. Over 21 locations will be coming out this December. You could dual wield everything. So every item that was in the game, you can actually hold in both hands and manipulate. I've always watched people play the Hitman game.
Me too.
Because we've talked about this, but we're no good at stealth.
No.
And so those games, you can play them without stealth, but it's honestly just not the experience you need. I'm really curious to see the kind of weird stuff people get into with VR. I'm very interested in playing this one.
Me too. I am so fascinated by what people who are really into Hitman, the different ways you can go about it, because there's so many different creative ways to go about Hitman in general. But in VR, I can only imagine the imagination that some players are going to have. So yeah, I'm very excited. The trailer got me really pumped. I'm excited to see how people play this.
For sure. And hopefully, I know this says PSVR 2 for now, but hopefully it will expand on other VR headsets, because I don't have a PSVR 2 yet.
Yeah, same.
And I do want to give this one a whirl for sure. Yeah. They showed Fear to the Spotlight. That's a new 90s horror game with the focus on storytelling, puzzle solving. So kind of like a Resident Evil-ish survival horror video game. It comes out in October. So just around the corner. That is a game announcement with a release date. They showed a new Dynasty Warriors Origins, where they overviewed combat and also did an overview of some story aspects. I've played some of these games. I will say it is very hard to follow the lore. There are so many video games to follow. But this one seems pretty breathtaking, because the amount of... If you see the trailer, the amount of characters they put on screen that you're capable of fighting is very fascinating. It kind of makes me think of like... I ended up watching that Space Marine 2 scene that you were talking about.
Yes, you did. Okay, nice.
Super impressive.
Right?
Super impressive.
Yeah. Unbelievable to have that many enemies on the screen and for it to run so smooth. It's wild to see.
And this seems to be in the same
Yeah.
scope, and it will be coming out in January. Very excited for that. Monster Hunter Wilds got a release date.
Yeah.
It's the continuation of the Monster Hunter series. I have not played any of those. Have you?
I've dabbled in the Monster Hunter franchise. So I played like a little bit of Monster Hunter Worlds, and I'm gonna be honest, it was actually pretty intimidating. Like it seemed like so many different mechanics and setups that I was a little confused by at first. And not saying that it's not a game that I want to jump into, because I feel like Monster Hunter is like right up my alley, something I would love. But there's definitely a lot to learn within the games. I also played a little bit more of Monster Hunter. Oh my goodness. Monster Hunter Rise, yes, on the Switch. Yes. That's another one I played a little bit more, and that was kind of easier to jump into for me. But seeing this trailer of Monster Hunter Wilds and the Monster Hunter games in general, like the huge boss fights just look so awesome. So Monster Hunter Wilds, I think seriously is going to be the one where I jump in, because I've been meaning to do it forever. Yeah,
it definitely seems like a good starting point for sure. It looks very polished. Graphically, it looks really nice. And then like, I was gonna save this for later on, but they announced a lot of PSVR or PS Pro, PS5 Pro titles that are going to be enhanced. This is one of those ones that is supposed to be enhanced. It is coming out in February, and with PS5 Pro coming out in November, this one like the initial titles that is really meant for that Pro, for sure. Here's an interesting one. We talked about it last week, but Palworld, which is currently being sued by Nintendo, just full-blown just did their thing and announced they're coming to Sony now.
Yeah.
And I will say, when I saw their trailer, I was like, you know what? I kind of get it. I kind of get where Nintendo's coming from, because it was a minute and a half trailer, and the first minute I was like, this just, until there was guns used, definitely looked like a Pokemon. But finally, it's coming to PS5. And so people can finally get their hands on the game that has been a huge craze on PC right now. There's been a few remakes. There's a Lunar Remastered collection.
Yes.
So that is all the Lunar RPGs. I am not savvy on those. Those are ones I've never played. But it looks like it's got a new HD front. It's now been widescreened. They've redone the text to be easier to look at. They added like lighting stuff. It looks very neat. It's coming out on Xbox, Switch, Steam, and PS4 and PS5. It releases spring next year. But the big one of the remasters, and we talked about this last week, but they got to show a trailer of it. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 are again a remastered version. It's developed by Asper Media. They're the people that remade Tomb Raider 1 and 3, or 1, 2, 3 rather. And it's been like 20 years since this game came out. A big PS1 classic that I remember playing a whole lot of, but I know a lot of people, like, to me on PS1, the ones that I remember that I would want a remake for was like Klonoa. I was really into
which they did remake.
They did, and it's beautiful,
so awesome. But yeah, I will say I was live streaming the State of Play, and I'd say one of the biggest reactions within the chat was the Legacy of Kain remastered announcement. So I know people are very excited for this. And again, I love that we live in a world now where all these remakes and remasters are happening. This is really exciting.
Yeah, it's like everyone that was fans of the PS1 classic are finally getting a nice, clean version. Not like, I don't think it's an immense leap up like, let's say, Shadow of Colossus was, or RE2 remake, but definitely does look noticeably different than the original. And so people can finally play it in one simple package, and that's coming out very soon. Last two things, Hell Is Us got a gameplay reveal trailer. That is the game that kind of looks like Death Stranding meets Dark Souls. I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but like, I thought I was watching Death Stranding 2.
Yeah.
And then the boss battles happened, and I was like, this is not the same game.
No, the exact same thing. Again, not to bring up the fact that I was live streaming it, but looking in the chat as it was happening, it was the same thing where people were saying, Death Stranding? Is this something about Death Stranding? So yeah, this seems very interesting. Again, yes. I love Kojima. Still have not played Death Stranding, but that's been massively like on a list of a backlog of games that I need to play because I love anything Kojima touches. And obviously, Dark Souls, I mean, I'm a Soulsborne franchise lover, very much so. So this looks really interesting, really interesting.
Yeah, so that comes out in 2025, and this is, I believe, the gameplay reveal. So before there was like a cinematic trailer, but it wasn't too heavy on gameplay.
Yeah.
So do check that one out because that does definitely look right up our alley. And so it is going on that short list of things I'm looking forward to in 2025. And then, you know, they announced all these cool things, but really they came out.
Yeah.
And when this trailer happened, I genuinely was like, I was like looking around because I got to text on someone about this because I did not see this coming. Sucker Punch is making a new video game, and it is the continuation of their previous video game, Ghost of Tsushima, called Ghost of Yotei, and it will release next year. What's very interesting about it is not the same character, and it's also not the same time period. It's actually 400 years further into the future from the first game. So it will probably feature, like, the trailer featured having a dog companion. It also, I believe, had guns in it at one point, or at least heard fire, like gunfire in it. And the main character is a female, or I believe at least they have not identified what they identify as. But and it will be also voiced by Erica. Oh my God, is she?
Okay,
is that her name? Yes, from
sounds right. Yeah.
Yes, from Dropout, or also a lot of other voice acting stuff. Okay. From the trailer alone, it looks very, very pretty. Because they did so many of, like, because Ghost of Tsushima had so many cool environments, so many colorful ones, and this one, it almost feels like whatever part of cool effects they had in the first game, they kept doubling up in these scenes. It looks incredible.
It really does. Like the original Ghost of Tsushima, I still like show this to people. Is the first game where you are you're finishing up on the intro and the song is playing, you're riding through the fields and the screen kind of widens out and says Ghost of Tsushima, is the most beautiful intro to a game I think I've ever played. Like I get goosebumps just talking about it. And then seeing these visuals in this trailer, it looks like it's going to be even more gorgeous, which is so interesting though too, because it looked so much like Ghost of Tsushima, but I believe this is being built again from the ground up for PlayStation 5. So again, it's going to be even more beautiful, more amazing. Ghost of Tsushima was one of my favorite new IPs of the past decade. I loved that game. So the fact that we're getting another Ghost game has me just beyond excited. And I know a lot of people are really excited about it too. So man, I can't wait.
Right now, that might be the most excited I am about a sequel right now.
Me too.
Some interesting tidbit. While this also came out, New York Times made a piece about it, including saying that the previous game sold over 13 million copies, which is an immense amount. Especially it came out on PC as well recently, so it's just gotten a resurgence on Steam. And then on top of that, it seems that Sony has already publicly said they want to make this into a TV and movie series as well, which is very interesting because I think what's fun about this is it's already kind of taken from movies. It's all taken from that era of movies, especially that first one. Like the opening scene is straight out of oh my God. Oh, I can't butcher this, so I'm not going to bother. But it definitely looks like a cinematic piece. It looks like the samurai cinema of the time. And so I'm very excited to see where that goes, and very excited because it will be coming out next year. And of course, will also feature PS5 Pro features and upgrades as well.
I'll tell you what, Una, that PS5 Pro is becoming more and more appealing when we're getting announcements like this, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know we talked about it last week, but I still got to get my hands on it.
Me too.
Because that's how I'm going to know for sure.
Yeah.
But a very good state of play.
And
especially with Ghost of Yotei, I think that is like a real banger announcement. And one I didn't see coming at all because I don't know what they were going to be dropping. And then one last piece of Sony news. This was not announced on Sony's state of play, but just simultaneously a day later or within a 24-hour cycle of that state of play, we got a Last of Us Season 2 teaser trailer. I would implore, go out of your way and watch it.
Yeah.
It looks like it's going to be damn good.
Yes. Again, Season 1 of The Last of Us was one of the best video game TV show adaptations there's ever been. There's no question in my mind that Season 2 is going to be incredible, especially watching the viewership from Season 1, how people were gaining viewers based on the episode, so people were getting more and more interested in the show. I feel like it did such a great service to the games. So Season 2 is going to be so much more of that. I can't wait for Season 2. That will be a day one watch for me, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. One of the best video game TV shows,
Easily.
if not the... Well, you did say Fallout was better. So.
Yeah, Fallout. But again, they're neck and neck. They're neck and neck.
There's a chance.
Yeah.
Season 2 could take it over. Right. And then finally, also on that state of play, we're talking about the PS5 Pro. They also... announced other games that are going to have upgrades, either graphically or ray tracing or whatever the sort. They hadn't precisely said what would be upgraded. But Stellar Blade, Jedi Survivor, F124, Metal Gear Solid Delta, which is the game that's coming out next month, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Village, and Dragon Age The Veilguard will all have PS5 Pro specific upgrades and updates. So they've been built with that console in mind. So there is, at least once the PS5 Pro comes out in November, a ton of stuff to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure.
And but that is it for the week. This week we had a pretty good one. But I think it is time. It's finally time, Chugs.
Yes.
It's our favorite segment of the show.
Favorite seg.
Community Mailbag comes in right after this. And we're back. It's time for our favorite segment here on All Elite Arcade. It is time for the Community Mailbag. That's right. You can get your questions answered right here on our podcast. All you got to go to do is go to tbs.com/arcade mailbag. That's tbs.com/arcade mailbag. Send your questions. We will answer them. We love when you do it.
Yes.
I know we keep saying it every single week, but a lot of times this is our favorite part because we get to think and reminisce on things that we don't typically think of. And it all starts today with Rio.
Yes, Rio, thank you for sending in the question. And Rio says, hey, Chugs and Uno, loving the podcast. Thank you. I consider myself a massive Soul Reaver fan, and I'm amped up about the news of the remastered versions being announced at the State of Play. Soul Reaver is a series known for its legendary voice acting, and it probably wouldn't have reached its heights without Michael Bell and Simon Templeman behind the voices of Raziel and Kane. With that said, which games do you think have the best voice acting in your opinion? If those voice actors weren't in the game, do you think it would still be as great? That is such a good question.
That's an incredible question.
Yeah.
The first one that comes to mind for me, and obviously, you have Charles Martinet that does Mario. You've got obviously Metal Gear Solid. But to me, the first voice that I think of when I think of exceptional voice acting is the Uncharted series.
Oh.
And I know Nolan North has done a ton of other stuff, but to me, when I hear or when I play that video game, it feels like the highest caliber of voice acting. We're like genuine emotions built strictly on what a person's voice is emoting. And of course, there's 4 or 5 games, 6 games if you could include the DLC and the side games. And so plenty of time to become accustomed to the characters and learn from them. But if you play Uncharted 4 and tell me Nolan North is bad at his job, I don't believe you, because I've cried at numerous times at those video games. I think a big part of it is about his incredible voice acting. So that's my pick number one for sure.
Yeah, there has been so many good moments with voice acting. I think, and Rio, you're absolutely right. It can make a total difference, make or break a game in a lot of ways. And I think about like David Hayter in Metal Gear Solid, the entire cast of Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, the Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us with Joel. Like there are so many good ones, but I really, really want to give some love to Ben Starr, who voiced Clive in Final Fantasy 16. He did such an unbelievable job. His range of emotion between being this like super awesome tough guy and then getting really, really emotional within that game was so incredible. And I'm pretty sure that was my first real experience with Ben Starr voice acting a character. And him as Clive in FF16 was just so unbelievable. So I'm going to say Ben Starr as Clive in Final Fantasy 16. Seriously, like his voice acting, same thing. It made me cry. He was so good, but so many good ones. So many good ones.
A huge list of them. Yeah. And to bring to your point, like that's if it wasn't for that voice acting, I don't think it would have hit that adult tone. And like that Final Fantasy feels so different from all the other ones. It really does feel like, well, not that all of them before are childish, but they're very much video game. This one feels like a cinematic and almost like a grown-up's Final Fantasy.
And it absolutely was the first mature-rated Final Fantasy ever. But another thing too is, again, he is so strong-willed and so tough throughout the whole game that when there is a moment of him kind of losing control, it's like you can't help but lose control because this character who's been so strong the entire time finally got really upset. And it was just so brilliant. And you're right, it would not have made Final Fantasy 16 as special if it wasn't for the voice acting in that game. So,
agreed.
Yeah, Rio, thank you very much for the question. Appreciate it.
Great question. Thank you so much. Next question is from Sam. Sam says, hey guys, there's a lot of online discussion recently around video game character design trends and how developers tend to follow certain stereotypes when designing their main characters. For example, men are designed to be generally muscular and or attractive, while women are slim and usually busty. It seems anytime a game diverts away from this trend, making their character ugly, for example, it makes headlines. Do you believe most gamers prefer that their video games have attractive characters, or do you think developers are forced to make their games attractive to sell video games?
Oh, yeah, Sam, very interesting question. Very, very good question, too. So I think generally speaking, of course, there's something to be said about people liking their movie characters or TV show characters or their video game characters to look attractive. I think that is certainly a trend that has continued for a long time. But Uno, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like now more than ever, it's like people are falling in love with like the depth of these characters, like how they react to certain situations, how they are as partners, the different adversities that they overcome. I think that's actually becoming more and more important, at least in 2024 within video games. Of course, you still have attractive characters for sure, but I think now what makes people really fall in love with a character is how endearing this character is.
And also if they represent like their way of life, or we're seeing a lot more female-led video games, or
which is great,
gender-bended characters, or like I feel like in a lot of ways that is what people want to see. So I do agree to your point, but I will say, just to give you the mirror image of this, I understand why they do it. Because like TV, movies, magazines, it's all on the principle that sex sells, and it doesn't have to be sexual acts. Sometimes just attractive people catch the eye. If a cover has an attractive male or female on it, it might catch your eye. So I understand that.
For sure.
What I will say though is let's stop doing that entirely. Stop it. Let's go back to artistic characters. Let's go back to mascots. Let's go back to animals with arms and legs. I want to see a gecko walking around on his hind legs.
Yeah.
I'm tired of characters that look like human beings. We're so far advanced now. It doesn't even nothing like we've done facial animations and we've seen it. It's cool that we could do cinema. Now do that, but with a crocodile man. Then you have my attention. That's where video games has to go. We're going back to the past.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Great question, Sam. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. And we have one more question on today's episode, and that's from Vincent. So, Vincent, thank you very much. Vincent says, "Hey, Chugs and Uno." What's up, Vincent? "These days, getting your friends on board with a new video game can feel like a big challenge. I tried to get my friends to play games like Valheim, Rust, and Helldivers, and it took forever to finally get them to join in. But once we did, we ended up spending hours having fun together and making great memories. It's been about 3 months since we last played, and we're back to where we started. No one wants to commit to anyone's game suggestions, even though everyone is eager to play together again. Do you have any tips on how to convince my friends to give one of my game ideas a shot without it turning into a long discussion every time?"
So I'll give you my tactic on this. I'm not much of a multiplayer game. So very rarely will I want to jump into multiplayer focused game because I'm kind of a solo guy. I'm a hermit and I like to do things on my own. But when I do want to get my friends involved in something, I have the same problem. No one ever wants to commit time. No one wants to make the jump into it. And so I go 2 routes. First, I send them gameplay videos. I'll tell you, 9 out of 10 times they still don't play. But then I go the other level, and maybe you don't want to do this because it becomes costly. I just buy them the video game. I buy them the video game, and
I've done that. Yeah.
They kind of just feel pressured. And guess what? Once they play, they want to keep playing. That's one way around it. Now I understand you can't keep buying $80 games for all your friends.
Yes.
But sometimes some Steam games, multiplayer games, might have a 4-player package. I'll get those and I'll send those out to a few friends, and that's how I end up pulling them into these experiences. Content warning, is that one the content based one, I believe? Yeah. So that's another one. A lot of those games, I'll buy several copies and just send it to my friends and be like, "Hey, look, now you have it. Can we play it?" And most of the time, that seems to work.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question because, again, I know time is so cherished, and maybe your friends have games that and they only have a little bit of time and they want to commit to that game. But again, similar to what Uno said, I think if it's a single player game, the 2 biggest things for me are enthusiasm and then playing the game in front of them. Like if I have a friend who's talking to me about a game and he can't help but get excited and animated and can't shut up about it, I know he's really passionate about it. And to me, enthusiasm is contagious. I can't help but pay attention. But secondly, sometimes just playing that game in front of your friend can get them to go, "Ooh, wait, this does seem really cool." I know that happened to me with Dark Souls. I had a buddy of mine who kept talking to me about Dark Souls over and over again. And I knew he was excited about it. Then I watched him play it and saw his reaction and how much he was enjoying it. And I was like, "Oh, this does seem really cool." When it comes to multiplayer games, I feel like this is a fair thing. And again, everyone's group of friends is different. But I feel like if all 3 of you or 4 of you have different games that you want to play, I feel like it's more than fair to cycle those games out. Maybe one week it's the game you want to play. Maybe the next week it's another friend, and vice versa. And just kind of keep it going down that way where everyone gets to play the game that they want to play. And then you also get a little mixture of stuff. But I know it can be challenging for sure. But having a group of friends to play games with, especially games that you're passionate about, is an awesome feeling. So hopefully in some small capacity, that can help in that situation.
I do want to give a quick shout out to this feature too, because I just thought about it. But on PlayStation, no one really talks about this, but it has a share play feature.
Yes.
Where if you get into a group chat, you can invite a person to play in as a local second player, or take over your screen, or just showcase your screen. You can do this on Discord as well. And if I'm not buying a person a game, usually if I tell them about it and they get excited but they don't want to make the jump, I'll sometimes share my screen for an hour. Either they'll watch it or get their hands on it, and a lot of times that convinces them as well. So that might be an option for you in the future, Vincent. Thank you so much for that
Yes.
question, though. Very interesting for sure. And you can get your questions answered in the future episodes of All Elite Arcade. All you got to do to get on our community mailbag is go to tbs.com/arcade mailbag, and we will read your questions right here on youtube.com/AEW Games or wherever you find our podcasts on your podcasting network. That is it for today's episode. I'm sorry if this was a quick one. I'm in Europe and I have things to do.
Yes,
but
of course.
I will say we packed a lot of stuff in this one.
We did, all things considered. We really did. Now, and I'm glad we got a short but sweet podcast episode in this week, man.
Now, of course, yeah. And, always, this is one of the things I look forward to every single week.
Me too.
Do check us out every single Monday. We drop our episodes, youtube.com/AW Games on YouTube. The visual format's on there. Look at our pretty faces. Go down in our comments down below and drop us some knowledge about the video games you have been playing with your friends, as well as who your favorite voice actors are in video games. We do read those comments.
Yeah.
We greatly appreciate your support. And tell a friend. Tell a friend about this podcast if you think they'll like video games. If you've been getting them to play video games with you, maybe they'll want to watch or listen to All Elite Arcade. The more the merrier. Bring them on. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Chugs, where can we find you? You going to be on Twitch this week?
Oh, I'm going to be on Twitch this week for sure, and I'm going to be continuing Black Myth Wukong once again. I'm getting close to the end. I feel like maybe this week or next week I'll be able to finish it. We'll see, but we're getting an end game with Black Myth Wukong. It's amazing. You can find me at twitch.tv/thechugs.
I keep promising it every week, but twitch.tv/eviluno. Next weekend, I'm finally at home. I'm going to play UFO 50.
Yes.
Somebody tweet at me over the next weekend and make sure I do it. Go check us out, twitch.tv/eviluno, twitch.tv/thechugs, and as well, youtube.com/AEW Games for all of our content. We have new content coming up in the future. We're working on a new Rolodex of stuff, so do check that out. That is it for this week's episode. We will be heading out. Thank you as always, and we will see you next Monday. Bye-bye.